The announcement by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth regarding U.S. military strikes against alleged narco vessels in the Eastern Pacific, carried out under President Trump's directive, represents a dramatic and legally contentious escalation of America's counter-narcotics strategy. This shift transforms drug interdiction from a law enforcement and Coast Guard mission into a lethal military campaign, invoking extraordinary war powers to justify the actions. Summary and analysis of the escalation. The recent strikes in the Eastern Pacific are part of an ongoing offensive that began previously in the Caribbean Sea. According to Hegseth, these actions constitute lethal kinetic strikes against vessels operated by what the administration labels designated terrorist organizations, DTOs, engaged in drug trafficking. The Pacific operations, which have reportedly resulted in multiple deaths, signify a crucial geographical expansion, shifting focus from Venezuela-linked routes in the Caribbean to the primary South American cocaine corridor off the coast of countries like Colombia. The language used by the administration, specifically the term narco-terrorist, is critical to the official analysis. By equating drug cartels to groups like Al-Qaeda, and invoking the post-9/11 war on terror legal framework, the administration seeks to grant the U.S. military the legal authority to conduct targeted lethal strikes without formal declarations of war or traditional legal process. This approach bypasses standard drug interdiction procedures, where suspects are typically apprehended by the Coast Guard and referred for civilian prosecution. The immediate destruction of the vessels and killing of those aboard, rather than capture, highlights the military nature of this new approach. Reasons for the military intervention. The motivation behind this dramatic policy shift is multifaceted, blending political, ideological, and strategic drivers. Legal stance. The primary legal justification hinges on the claim that drug cartels are engaged in a non-international armed conflict with the United States. The administration argues that the massive influx of narcotics, especially fentanyl, constitutes an ongoing armed attack against the U.S. population, necessitating a military response in self-defense under Article 2 of the Constitution. This ideological reclassification turns criminals into enemy combatants. Political posturing and border security. The actions align with a political narrative emphasizing aggressive maximum force measures to secure the border and combat transnational threats. Comparing drug cartels to Al-Qaeda frames the action as necessary defense against existential threats, resonating with a base supportive of robust, unilateral executive action. Strategic shift to Pacific routes. The expansion into the Eastern Pacific acknowledges that this area is the major transit route for cocaine originating from South America. Previous operations concentrated in the Caribbean were potentially less effective in disrupting the core supply chain. The Pacific strikes target the heart of the illicit shipping network. Consequences and controversies. The consequences of these strikes are profound, raising serious legal, diplomatic, and humanitarian issues. International law and sovereignty. Legal experts widely condemn the strikes, arguing that they amount to extrajudicial killings under international human rights law. Unless the individuals on the vessels posed an imminent threat to U.S. personnel or were confirmed combatants in an actual armed conflict, their killing outside a standard legal process is highly questionable. Furthermore, the strikes have generated significant diplomatic friction, particularly with Colombia, whose President Gustavo Petro publicly rejected the destruction of vessels in the region, labeling the killings murder. Lack of transparency. The administration has been criticized by Congress for a profound lack of transparency. The claims that the vessels were carrying substantial amounts of narcotics or linked to specific DTOs are based on classified intelligence, reportedly supplied heavily by the CIA. The refusal to release unclassified evidence prevents public verification and undermines the accountability of the military action. Erosion of civilian law enforcement. This military approach sidelines the established law enforcement model, which focuses on interdiction, seizure, and criminal prosecution. Replacing arrests with lethal force risks creating a dangerous precedent, blurring the lines between military action and police power in international waters. Predictions and solutions. The current trajectory suggests a continued and likely expanded campaign. Prediction: it is highly probable that the U.S. will continue to utilize lethal kinetic strikes, especially given President Trump's statements suggesting the campaign could eventually expand to include targets on land. This sustained military pressure will likely increase regional instability, further strain relations with South American nations, and intensify the legal debate over the extent of the president's war powers. The strikes, while perhaps temporarily disrupting specific routes, are unlikely to dismantle the highly adaptable drug cartels themselves. Solutions: addressing the drug crisis requires shifting the emphasis back from unilateral military action to comprehensive, multi-layered strategies. Reinforce civilian interdiction. Prioritize and increase funding for the U.S. Coast Guard and partner nation naval forces to perform non-lethal interdiction, detention, and transfer for prosecution. This respects international law and allows for the gathering of intelligence via arrested suspects. Enhance intelligence and legal cooperation. Focus on sophisticated intelligence sharing and joint legal efforts with countries like Colombia, Ecuador, and Panama to target cartel finances and leadership. Use racketeering and financial sanctions rather than just kinetic force to dismantle DTO structures. Address root causes and demand. The most sustainable solution involves investing in drug treatment and prevention programs domestically and supporting economic development and alternative crop strategies in source countries. Reducing U.S. demand reduces the market incentive for trafficking, ultimately eliminating the need for military strikes at sea. In conclusion, while the administration frames these lethal strikes as a necessary and decisive defense against narco-terrorism, the policy's legality, diplomatic cost, and long-term efficacy remain highly questionable. A return to international cooperation, law enforcement focus, and addressing the demand side of the equation offers a more stable and sustainable path to combating the transnational drug trade.